without good planning and instruction, lesson design, you cannot, as a teacher, perform effective lesson performing. So, in this chapter, well, we're gonna learn about how important for you to make good instructional planning and lesson design, and then how it will affect actual class. Then we're gonna see the result of good instructional planning and lesson design. So this chapter is all talking about those three big parts. Okay, first, instructional planning and lesson design are we call systemic process that is making sure effective teaching and learning. It prevents us wasting time and energy, your efforts. So this process involves structuring educational experiences to align with learning objectives, instructional strategies, and assessment methods, then student engagement techniques. So effective instructional planning is fundamental, foundation, and essential for achieving desired learning outcomes and fostering meaningful student engagement. So to make good instructional planning and lesson design, as we know, we have to have foundation of educational theories, which we were talked about: behavior theory, cognitive theory, constructive theory, right? Those theories are the foundation of instructional planning and lesson design. So with those theories, the instructional designers, planners, teachers have developed various models and frameworks to guide teachers in lesson planning. Okay, one of those design models we call Bloom's taxonomy. Gagne's 9 events of instruction, and backward design models. And another one, differentiated instruction. These are all models and framework based on educational theories, which were behavioral theory, cognitive theory, constructive theory. Okay, small chapter 1, we are going to talking about how important for you to make good instructional planning. So instructional planning is essential for structuring effective learning experiences. That is making sure that lessons are aligned with curriculums, standards, and learning objectives than student needs. Without aligning with curriculum standards, learning objectives, student needs, you cannot make good lesson planning. So, effective planning that helps educators, teachers manage their time efficiently, utilize appropriate teaching methods, and assess student progresses. Utilizing appropriate teaching method is also important. Nowadays, with help of modern technology, we can use various high-tech technologies. Okay, another small chapter we are talking about is key components of instructional planning. These are 4 topics. Without these key components, we cannot make good instructional planning. Okay? As teacher, you have to know what is learning objectives and standards. Also, you need to build instructional strategies. Also, we need to assess, evaluate for children's, students' progress, right? So, assessment measure student learning, and then also provide feedback for their instructional improvement. Also, another part we have to consider is differentiation and adoption. Always, teachers must accommodate diverse learning needs through differentiated instructions. In one classroom, there are various learning background of children, right? Also, they have their own cultures. They have their own learning competencies. So these are all considered in you make differentiation and adoption when you teach your students. Okay, let's delve more about learning objectives and standards. Okay, lesson design begins with clear, defined learning objectives, which articulate what students should know or to be able to do by the end of the lesson. Also, objectives should be very specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, we call SMART. We're going to talk about this later, okay, about SMART. So, learning objectives, it is always aligned with state, national, or any other, official instructional education standards, like, Common Core State Standard, right? Or Association of Christian Schools International, ACSI, something like that. So, with this standard, we can ensure consistency in actual subject curriculum to be delivered to students. Okay, more about learning objectives and standards. Development of objectives that is often guided by Bloom's taxonomy, which classifies cognitive learning to 6 levels. Like 6th level means remembering. That means recall of information. Understanding, that is comprehension of concepts. Applying, that is using knowledges in practical situations. Next, analyzing. Break down the informations to identify, and then you can get the ideas of relationship between informations. Then the evaluating, making judgment, decision based on the criteria. Then last one is creating, producing new ideas or constructing new knowledges. These are all 6 levels about Bloom's taxonomy classification. So next video, we're gonna watch short explanation of what the Bloom's taxonomy means. Okay, let's watch together. Okay, sorry. Okay, video, audio.
Bloom's taxonomy is a toolbox that teachers or students can use to classify and organize learning objectives. Its most popular version is based on the cognitive domain and assumes that learning should be structured from easy to difficult in the following 6 steps. 1. Remember. 2. Understand. 3. Apply. 4. Analyze. 5. Evaluate. 6. Create. On the first level, we learn to remember. There is just rote memorization and recollection of facts without much understanding. For example, if we learn about lemons, we want to remember the name, shape, color, size, and that they are sour. Once we memorize these essentially meaningless facts, we move to the second level of learning. On level 2, we learn to understand. We begin to decode information and learn that a lemon is yellow when it's ripe to eat, and if we take a bite, that it's really super sour. We also understand that lemons love sunshine and that they contain lots of vitamin C, which is a great natural antioxidant that keeps us healthy. Now, as we really understand a lemon, we can work with it. On the third level, we apply what we know. We've understood that while lemons are sour, they are also a great provider of vitamin C. To apply this knowledge in a meaningful way, we could boil a lemon into hot water and add some honey. Then serve this hot lemon to our sick sister who's in need of treatment. On the fourth level, we learn to analyze. This involves examining and breaking down information into components, determining how the parts relate to one another, and finding evidence to support generalizations. We study the lemon flesh, examine the skin, and look at levels of vitamins. We conclude that we can eat everything inside, while the skin tastes bitter and contains traces of toxic pesticides. It ought not to be consumed. Now we are ready to evaluate. We analyze, critique, and compare. To evaluate our lemon as a good source of vitamins, we compare it to other sources, such as oranges and supplements. We look at the following properties: vitamin levels, affordability, taste, and packaging waste. If we evaluate our thoughts critically and without bias, we learn where the lemons score high and where others score higher. Now, after we have learned, understood, applied, analyzed, and evaluated, we are ready to create. As we now really understand lemons, also in comparison to similar things, we can formulate a plan to create our own natural lemonade. It's now easy to come up with a cute shop design, a good name, and a good slogan: natural, healthy, yummy. Bloom's taxonomy was first created in 1946 by American psychologist Benjamin Bloom. The revised version from 2001, as just presented, serves as the backbone of many teaching philosophies, in particular those that aim towards teaching specific skills. Each level usually comes with a clear learning objective that can be tested. Critics of the taxonomy often question the existence of a sequential, hierarchical link between each level. What are your thoughts? Please share them in the comments below.
Yes, these are all about Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, there are 6 levels about learning objectives, right? First, we have to remember, recall of all information about, like, for example, lemon, right? Color, taste, and its shape, right? Those things we have to remember. Then the understanding, the comprehension of concepts, right? And then it has color and it has taste, sour, right? Those are things, components, comprehension of understanding what the lemon is like. And then applying. This is using the knowledge about lemon, right, in practical situations. Then analyzing, break down information to identify the relationships between each factors. Then evaluating, making judgment, making decision based on all the information in criteria. Then creating, produce new idea or constructing new knowledges. That is all included in Bloom's taxonomy in 6 level criteria. Okay. Another key component for instructional planning, which is instructional strategy. It is the choice of instructional strategy that depends on the subject matter, student needs, and learning objectives. There are several instructional strategies. For example, direct instructions, teacher-centered approach with explicit explanation and models. And another one is inquiry-based learning. That encourages the student to explore, ask questions, and investigate concepts of independently. Another one is cooperative learning. Uses group work and peer collaboration to enhance those understandings. Problem-based learning, we call PBL, engages students in real-world problem-solving scenarios. And then another one is flipped classroom. Students engage with instructional contents outside the class and applying their knowledge during class activities. Also, there's one we call gamification, that is using game elements. You can use points, rewards, challenges to enhance learning motivation. So, direct instruction. Okay, direct instruction is a technique teachers use to help students understand concepts, develop skills, and archive learning objectives. So, effective strategies that cater to different learning style and needs, ensuring meaningful engagement. So direct instruction is good for introducing new contents, reinforcing foundational skills, and ensuring clarity. Okay. For example, of direct instruction is lectures with visual aids, like PowerPoint, whiteboard that is used with in classroom, that is visual aids, and then step-by-step problem solving, that is demonstration in math, right? And then explicit phonics instruction in reading. These are all examples of direct instruction. Another instruction we are calling it scaffolding, that is providing structured support structure support that is gradually removed as students gain independently. It is like providing sentence starter for writing assignment, using guided questions before moving to open-end discussion, and then demonstrating a skill, practicing together, then allowing students to try independently. Next, another components of instructional planning is experiential learning. Learning through hands-on experience and reflection, like science labs where students conduct experiments, field trip to historical sites to enhance history lessons, internships, and service learning projects. Then another one we can use is technology-enhanced learning. Using digital tools to support and improve instruction, visual simulations in physics and chemistry, then interactive whiteboard for dynamic lesson deliveries. These are all key components of different instructional plannings. Okay, so you could use these various instructional strategies. Okay, the choice of this method is depend on what the subject matter is like, student needs, and learning objectives. So let's watch inquiry-based learning is like, okay? That is encouraging students to explore, ask questions, and investigate concepts independently. Okay, let's watch a short video of this.
Inquiry-based learning is an educational approach that centers on exploring and resolving questions, problems, or scenarios. Unlike traditional education methods, which often start with facts and laws, inquiry-based learning begins with questions posed by students or instructors. This method emphasizes the student's role in the learning process, making it a more active experience where they are encouraged to engage with the material, ask questions, and explore the answers. The origins of inquiry-based learning can be traced back to the early 20th century, influenced heavily by educational theorists such as John Dewey. Dewey championed the idea that education should be rooted in real experience and reflection rather than rote memorization. He believed that learners do best in an environment where they are allowed to experience and interact with the curriculum, and this foundation is what inquiry-based learning builds upon. Moving on to the key features, inquiry-based learning is characterized by several important aspects. First, it involves a process of exploring and investigating. Students are encouraged to be curious, ask questions, and conduct experiments. This active participation helps them develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Second, it is student-centered. The student's interests and questions drive the learning process, which can lead to more personalized and relevant educational experiences. Third, it requires teachers to adopt the role of facilitators rather than traditional instructors. They provide guidance and resources, support the learner's inquiry, and help scaffold their understanding, but do not dictate the learning path. To illustrate these features, consider the example of a science class, exploring the concept of ecosystems. Instead of starting with a textbook description of what an ecosystem is, the teacher might begin by showing a video or presenting a real-world scenario that raises questions about how different organisms interact in nature. Students could then formulate their own questions, such as how does the removal of one species affect the whole ecosystem? Or what role do plants play in maintaining ecological balance? To find answers, they might conduct research, create models of ecosystems, and even undertake field visits to observe ecosystems directly. This hands-on investigative approach not only helps students understand the concept of ecosystems more deeply, but also connects them to the real world, making learning more meaningful and engaging. One of the major strengths of inquiry-based learning is its ability to foster a deeper understanding and retention of material. By actively engaging in the process of discovery, students often develop a more profound connection to the subject matter. This method also enhances critical thinking and problem-solving skills, as students are not just given information, but must figure out what to do with it. Additionally, inquiry-based learning is highly adaptable to different learning styles and needs, making it inclusive and effective for a diverse classroom. Students who learn by doing, questioning, and experimenting can thrive in this environment, often finding it more motivating and stimulating than traditional lecture-based approaches. However, there are some weaknesses to consider with inquiry-based learning. One challenge is that it requires significant time and resources to implement effectively. Teachers must prepare suitable materials and scenarios that provoke curiosity and allow for deep investigation. There's also a risk of students feeling overwhelmed or directionless without traditional structure, especially those who may require more guidance or are less accustomed to self-directed learning. Furthermore, assessing students' progress can be more complex in this model, as their learning paths may be highly individualized and non-linear. This can make it difficult for educators to measure outcomes uniformly, potentially impacting how learning achievements are recognized and valued. If you're a university student, you might benefit from my detailed article on inquiry-based learning. I've left a link to that article in the pinned comment. An approach similar to the inquiry-based approach is project-based learning. You should be able to see my video about project-based.
Okay. Inquiry-based learning. Okay, it is about students themselves. They explore questions and problems. They develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills. They do these things on their own. Okay? It is best for encouraging curiosity, deep thinking, and student autonomy. Okay? For example, science experiments where students form hypotheses and then they can test that hypothesis. Scholastic scenarios, right? Seminars in literature class where students discuss themes and interpretations in literature classes. Also, there should be another example, project-based research on historical events, right? These are all included in example of inquiry-based learning. Okay, another strategy for instruction you can use is cooperative learning, which is you can use group work and peer collaboration to enhance students' understanding. Okay, here I have another short video of cooperative learning. Okay, let's watch what the cooperative learning is like.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education, Cooperative Learning. Now, let's begin with the question of why should educators use cooperative learning in the classroom? Teachers should not come to class with the same lesson plans each and every day. Change things up. Allow students to hear a voice of someone different. Allow them to hear the voice of their peers. This way, students get a break from boring teacher lectures. Cooperative learning is a great strategy because it's all about the students and their own thoughts and ideas. The students are actually the center of learning, not the teacher. As teachers, we have a responsibility to prepare students for most careers which happen to require people to work in groups with others. Cooperative learning is a key component of 21st century life skills. Ultimately, we are smarter together as a group than we are apart as individuals. A common question is, how do we group students for cooperative learning? It is best to group students deliberately, and the first thing to consider when grouping students are their academic abilities and their test scores. So consider grouping students by performance level, homogeneous grouping for students with similar performance levels, and heterogeneous grouping for different performance levels. Student safety is always the #1 priority. Avoid bullying situations. Therefore, consider grouping students for harmonious and safe environments. Another possibility for grouping is a random approach. In that case, there is no particular rhyme or reason for placing any one student in a group as opposed to placing them in another group. Random grouping is sometimes used when teachers are looking to shake things up. When students are grouped together, things can get out of control pretty quickly. To keep order, assign students specific roles within the group, therefore assigning responsibilities to its members. Always remember, the best grouping scenario is one where students are both safe and learning. Now it's time to look at some classroom examples for our teachers. It should be noted that there are many different strategies. The first strategy is think, pair, share. Students are first given a question to work on. Then they are grouped into pairs. Once grouped, they can compare answers and discuss their different perspectives. Sometimes they are asked to come up with a single answer and then share that answer with the entire class. The jigsaw learning model. Students are assigned into different groups. The first group they are assigned to is the home group. Each student is given a different topic to study. That student joins other students with the same topic, the expert group, and shares ideas on that topic. Lastly, students come back to the home group and share what they learned from the expert group. There are many different project-based learning examples that allow students to work in groups and solve different real-world problems. Project-based learning should be aligned to standards and based around a driving inquiry question. Before we finish, let's consider some cautions and dangers for cooperative learning. First off, whenever students are placed in groups, there's a tendency to talk. Students will have conversations because students tend to socialize when given a chance. So teachers must be vigilant and keep a close eye on students. Also, group sizes should be no larger than 3 or 4 students. The large number of students placed in the group, the less work that gets done. In psychology, it's called the Ringelmann effect. For cooperative learning to work efficiently, requires submission of student work. Make sure these lessons have learning goals and objectives that students must meet. Lastly, because cooperative learning is group work, some students will look to take advantage of that and do little to no work, and allow their peers to do all the work. As a teacher, you must ensure individual accountability to each student. Right now, I want to say thank you for your time.
Okay. Cooperative work strategy, that is the definition of students. They work in small groups to achieve shared learning goals. It is best for enhancing collaboration between students, and then it is also good for communication and peer learning. Students learn things from each other, right? So here are the examples of cooperative learning. Like the first ones, like think, pair, share. Students, they discuss concepts with partner before sharing with the classes. Okay, and then jigsaw method. It is each student become an expert on particular topics and teaches that to their group. It is like pretending, jigsaw method is like pretending teacher for students. And then group project, that is also work of cooperative learning, okay? That requires teamwork. Without the teamwork, we cannot make things as good projects, right? And problem-solving techniques we need. When they need any kind of hardship problems, they work together, solving their problems. Okay, another instructional strategy is we call problem-based learning, PBL. Okay, that is engagement of students in the real-world problem-solving scenarios. Okay, let's watch what this PBL is like. Okay, problem-solving learning.
Problem-based learning in less than 5 minutes, I promise. In the 1980s, somebody decided that haircuts were way too messy. So they combined the hair trimmer and the vacuum cleaner, and we ended up with the Flowbee. And I remember begging my parents for a Flowbee, and they said no, because they thought I would use it on the dock, and they were probably right. But the idea there is pretty clear, that you can solve problems in unique ways. And that's the core idea of problem-based learning. Number one, the need for problem-based learning. School exists in a one-size-fits-all factory model where students are expected to passively consume content. But here's the thing, kids aren't widgets, and one-size-fits-all is great for socks but lousy for minds. Kids need to dream and wonder and imagine. They need to design and build and tinker, and they need to think critically and solve complex problems. For years, the model has involved going to school, being compliant, getting into college, and then climbing the corporate ladder. But the ladder is now a maze, and our students need to know how to navigate the complexity of a global society. In other words, students need to be empowered to solve real-world problems. And that's why we have problem-based learning. Number two, the history of problem-based learning. Problem-based learning began at Case Western University in the 1950s, although it wasn't called that at the time. And the goal was to provide real-world problems for medical students to solve. It soon spread to other medical schools and eventually made its way into business, law, engineering, and education. And by the 1960s, you could find elements of problem-based learning within the new social studies framework of Macialis and Cox, as well as Herbert Thielen's group investigation model. Problem-based learning fits well within the social family of education because of the emphasis on real-world problems in human systems. It's not surprising that many of the problem-based learning theorists cite John Dewey's notion of democratic education, as well as Paulo Freire's concept of critical pedagogy. In other words, kids need to be engaged with solving problems within their world. And here's the description of problem-based learning. There are 4 different phases. Number one, you present or identify the problem. In some cases, the teacher decides on the problem. In other cases, individual students or the entire classroom community presents the initial problem. Phase number 2, they develop a plan for solving the problem. Here, students work collaboratively in this phase where they figure out what they will do in order to solve the problem. In some cases, it's a really small plan of action, but sometimes they might engage in research, brainstorming, and ideation. And in a few cases, they might even decide to build a product. The next phase is the implementation of the plan. In this phase, students test out their plan to see if they can solve the problem. And then finally, they move to the last phase where they evaluate the implementation. Here, students analyze the results and they also reflect on the process. Now, here's the ideal context for problem-based learning. Problem-based learning works best when students solve authentic real-world problems. Math teacher Dan Meyer warns against solving problems that contain pseudo-context, where students solve problems that don't actually reflect the way the world exists. So it's important that the problems feel real to the students.
In social studies, students might broker peace in a war simulation. In math, they might determine the most efficient route for a trip. In language arts, they might figure out if a novel should be adapted into a movie. And in science, they might do a science fair project. But the key idea here is that it is not project-based learning, it's problem-based. And that's because you don't have to design a product. You're simply solving a problem.
Ideally, students will solve problems that actually exist in their own world. And here's where the technology comes in. Our devices have a slew of apps that once required additional time and resources. And the problem-based learning provides a model that taps into both the connective and creative capacity of technology so that students can access the tools and the information to solve these real-world problems. So that is basically problem-based learning in less than 5 minutes.
Okay, problem-based learning, we call PBL. That strategy is also good when students learn by solving real-world problems like climate changes and applying their critical thinking ideas and research skills. Okay, it is good for encouraging analytical skills and real-world application of their knowledges. Example in problem-based learning is like engineering students, they engage in model bridge that meets structural constraints. And then business students, they create marketing plan for a new product, right? And medical students, they diagnosing patient case studies. These are all included in problem-based learnings. Okay, another learning strategy we have to know is flipped classroom, okay, which is the students, they engage with instructional contents outside class and they apply the knowledge during in-class activities. So here is another example of flipped classroom. Let's watch short video of that, okay?
The flipped classroom is a new method of teaching that is turning the traditional classroom on its head. Every day, thousands of teachers deliver the exact same lesson in class to millions of students. Every The flipped classroom is a new method of teaching that is turning the traditional classroom on its head. Every day, thousands of teachers deliver the exact same lesson in class to millions of students. Every night, millions of students sit over the exact same homework, trying to figure out how to solve it. The flipped classroom is turning this upside down. Traditionally, students listen to lectures and take tests in class and read textbooks and work on problem sets at home. In flipped teaching, students first study the topic by themselves, typically using video lessons on YouTube, and then apply the knowledge by solving problems and doing practical work in class. Modern schools who flipped their classroom report many benefits. 1. It allows all students to learn at their own pace, as videos can be watched again. 2. It's more efficient, as students enter the classroom prepared to contribute. 3. It enriches the classroom, as more time can be spent on group work and projects. 4. Doing homework in class allows students to help each other, which benefits both the advanced and less advanced learners. Flipping also brings changes for teachers. Traditionally, teachers engage most with the confident students who ask questions. Flipping allows teachers to target the students who really need help, instead of just those who are confident. Also, instead of instructing from the front, teachers guide on the side. This allows them to work more closely with individuals or small groups. Teachers that are not great presenters can use third-party videos to explain the concept and focus on methods of teaching that suit their style, such as project work or experiments. Once video lectures are made available online, teachers don't need to give the same lecture over and over again. Again, they gain more time to focus on the needs of their class. Many scholars also argue that the flipped classroom model promotes equal learning opportunities, as all kids get the same attention when doing their homework. Currently, kids with caring parents, older siblings at home, or expensive private tutors have a clear advantage over those who don't. Let us know what you think. If you were a teacher, tell us if this model will be possible in your classroom. If you were a student, let us know if you would prefer learning in a flipped classroom.
Okay, another instruction strategy we have to know is flipped classroom. That is all about students, they learn the contents at their home. Like, they watch videos, they read books, and then with those pre-information, they can engage in hands-on activities in their during classroom activities. It is good for you to maximize the classroom interactions and practical applications. Like example, we can say students watch math tutorial at home, and then they come to school solving the problems in classroom. Okay, and then another example is reading historical document before the class, then they debate its impacts of historical events. And reviewing grammar rules online. There are many good online tutoring sites, right? Like academies, something like that. And then before coming to the school, they watch those videos. Then actually in the classroom, they can practicing writing skills in the classroom. These are all about flipped classroom strategy. Okay, another components in instructional planning. Now we call it is assessment and evaluation. Assessment measures a student learning and then provide feedback to the students for better instructional improvement. Okay, there are two different major types of assessment. First one is formative assessment. Like you give quizzes, you give discussions, you give reflections. That is guide instructional adjustment. Okay, another one we call summative assessment. It is like, final exam, midterm exam, and project that is presented almost when at the end of the semester and quarters, right? And then also presentations. All this summative assessment that evaluates overall learning outcomes of student they learn in classroom. So authentically assessment method is it could be case study and performance based on task that allows students to demonstrate their understanding in real world context too. Okay. Lastly, the important key components of instructional planning, which is differentiation and adoption. Okay, teachers always ready to use different methods in classroom. Okay, so teachers must accommodate diverse learning needs through differentiated instructions. More detailedly about what the differentiated instruction is like. Content differentiation. Adjusting materials based on the student readiness. Process differentiation. You can do varied teaching methods to accommodate different learning styles. And then product differentiation that allows students to demonstrate learning in multiple ways. Also, another one is universal design for learning. We call UDL. That is principle that emphasize multiple meaning of representation, engagement, and expression that is making sure inclusive for all learners, including those with disabilities too. Okay, key component of instructional learning, differentiation and accommodation, right? Last slide we show UDL. Okay, UDL is important in differentiation. Okay, one more time. Universal design for learning principle, that is UDL. That is principle which has emphasizes multiple means of representation, engagement, expression, ensuring exclusive for all learners. That includes those with disabilities too. So let's watch short video of universal learning, universal design learning. Okay. after watching, yes. Okay, let's watch what the universal design for learning.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education. In this video, you will learn everything you ever wanted to know about universal design for learning. Let's begin with the question of why should educators use a universal design for learning? The purpose of UDL is to provide all students, regardless of their background, with an equal opportunity to learn and succeed in the classroom. A UDL approach must serve the needs of each classroom's diverse group of learners, regardless of the student's cultural background, race, socioeconomic status, gender, language ability, reading, writing, or math proficiency, and even the student's motivation. This approach will empower both students and educators. Now, let's look at some specific benefits of UDL. First off, students are individuals, and some have specific barriers to learning. UDL curriculum designs aim to help students get around those barriers. Still, the approach incorporates assessments, lessons, and objectives that are both challenging and at the same time achievable for each student. This in turn will increase student engagement. Educators are empowered and able to enhance the curriculum for the benefit of their students. Enhanced curriculum includes new technology, exciting lessons, and added materials. Other than removing barriers, UDL should also build on student strength. Too often, educators spend all of their time focusing on deficiencies as opposed to accentuating student positives. On to the next section, which is the 3 guiding principles of UDL. The first principle is offering multiple ways to represent content. Besides just using a textbook, offer audio content, video to view, news articles, and more options. The second principle is to allow students to express their mastery of content. A teacher may allow some students to take a paper test and other students can do an oral presentation. The third principle is providing various ways to motivate and engage students to learn. Consider game-based learning, gamification, culture studies, the language experience approach. Next, let's take a practical look at how to incorporate UDL in the classroom. Choice assignments are one staple of a UDL classroom. Not only do students feel a sense of autonomy, they feel more obligated to complete the assignment because they chose it. Next, teachers need a variety of materials on hand. For this reason, it's important to get department chairs and school principals on board to help secure supplies. Flexible assessment is another key component of UDL implementation. This goes back to building on student strengths and designing assessments based off of those strengths. Teachers should look to vary presentation of content. For example, not everyone has the attention for a lecture. There are many types of engaging videos on the internet as an alternative format. Also important is having supports in place for students. Identify students and their specific needs. Scaffold assignments and lessons. Teachers can be supported in many ways. Right now, I'm going to take a quick break and ask that you hit that subscribe button. Also, I ask that you hit the thumbs up button and give this video a like as well. Now let's get back to it. Collaboration. The inclusion classroom is the most common place you would find implementation of universal design for learning. And that's because the collaboration can take place between the special education teacher and general education teacher. Collaboration of educators, teachers, administrators, and paraprofessionals should all be centered around shared goals and visions. Still, communication is what really drives collaboration. UDL requires open lines of communication between educators in a very professional way. The best thing to do is to create set times and places to meet and collaborate. It's easy to fall off with these set times and meetings. At these meetings, educators should work together on planning for UDL, implementing those plans, and eventually assessing the overall effects of the UDL approach. The next topic is lesson planning for the UDL. One way to get started is to create a class profile and get an understanding of each student's strengths and weaknesses, their likes and dislikes, etc. and so forth. You don't want to plan a lesson without having a viable curriculum. Educators may have to audit the current curriculum and find out ways to improve the quality of that curriculum. Special education and general education teachers should work together to develop SMART goals for their students. SMART meaning specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Examining any UDL approach-centered lesson should have a lot of variety and different components. Lesson plans should not look the same day to day. After planning these wonderful UDL lessons, teachers need to take a look back and reflect on what worked and what did not work. And now the last section of this presentation, actual classroom examples of UDL at work. A UDL approach comes with a flexible learning environment where the teacher is always accessible. Students may be working alone or in groups, and they may be at the teacher's desk or designated areas, or working independently. Lessons are multi-sensory in nature, meaning that they can incorporate music or visual graphics, video, or any other thing that you might like. Projects are an easy way to get new activities out for the students, and teachers can get really creative because there are so many projects out there. With these projects, there is always options to create groups. Teachers can go back to their classes, look at their student profiles, and figure out ways to design these groups. Because UDL has to meet the needs of so many, it should not rely heavily on teacher-driven lecture, but rather a student-centered approach to learning. Anyway, right now I just want...
Okay, another instruction strategy we can call it is universal design for learning. It is one of the framework that is actually designed, instructed to improve, optimize your teaching for students. A student might be all different level of learning ability. It doesn't matter. You can use a different method to transfer knowledge, teach based on their level of understanding. Okay. Sometimes you can use one student for video watching. You know, some student you can use same concept, right? Same. The knowledge. Some student is better understanding with video watching, right? And then other students better understanding with reading the book. So you can use different method for each student's learning ability. That is simply universal design for learning. Okay. So it is, you can use many flexibility, okay, to how to, student can access to the information, and then they can engage in context and then express what they know. Okay, when you test them, some student can do speech in the classroom. Some students same topic, right? So some student can write the letter report to the teacher, or some student they can do group work and present the assignment. Yeah, that is all acceptable in universal design for learnings. Okay, and let's see. I have one video. Okay, so now there are different models of lesson design. Okay, all this lesson design is based on educational theory, which is like behavioral theory, cognitive theory, constructive theory, right? Based on these theories, some scholars, some psychologists, they developed certain method for actual classroom, which is we call lesson design. Okay, the most famous one is Gagne's 9 event of instruction. Okay, which is Robert Gagne instructional design model that outlines 9 sequential steps. We're gonna delve more about this. And then another classroom design lesson design should be backward design. That is understanding by design. It is developed by Grant Wiggins and J. McTighe. Backward design, it is focusing on starting with end in the mind. Okay, and then another one is ADDIE model, which is systemic instructional design. That is framework which used in education and corporate training. Okay, now today we can see more about Robert Gagne's 9 events of instruction. Okay, first let's watch short video of what is 9 events of instruction. Let's see.
Hi, are you? Hi, are you Barry?
Yes, that's me.
I'm Rainbow, your leadership coach.
Thank you so much for fitting me in. I'm really nervous about my assessment, and I'm glad that you can help me.
I'm more than happy to help. I completely understand why you're so nervous. The assessments are really important to your career. I'm so glad you wanted some coaching. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead and get comfortable. Barry, our goals for you are to gain confidence and achieve a higher ranking on your upcoming assessment. Let's start. Now, Barry, I'm sure you've done this before. Did you review the video I sent you?
Yes, I did, but I'm still apprehensive.
Well, let me show you first, and then you can try. Pay attention to body language, and remember to maintain eye contact and smile. Join in with me when you're ready, and we'll work together to enhance your skills. Shoulders back, relax, eye contact, and smile. Okay, your turn to practice, and I'll give you feedback. Wow, you did great for your first try. What would you do differently that would help you to feel even more comfortable performing in front of your peers?
You're right, I do feel more confident, and I do have a few ideas that I can try. What about this?
That's much, much better. You definitely look more confident, relaxed, and comfortable with your body language. Do you feel ready for the leadership assessment?
Yes, but with more practice, though.
Let's practice it again together, this time under the real assessment conditions.
Okay, this is a short video that can wake you up about Gagne's 9 event of instruction. Okay, so we're gonna delve more about what the Gagne's what the Gagne's 9 event of instruction. He designed an instructional model to outline there's 9 sequential steps. Okay, to do better performance as teacher you do in the classroom, you also have to be expert on this lesson design. Okay, first we call gain attention. Capture, you have to capture students' attention and their interest through questions and through stories, right? Interesting stories students might like, right? And then multimedias. Sometimes you show them the videos and then they watch, right? Then they kind of have start to have interest in watching videos contents, right? So use provoking questions and or surprising facts. You can use it to gain attention from the students. Also, you can also show short videos, and then also you can do some kind of demonstration in the classroom, and then also you tell them real problems in real world scenarios, like climate changes. Okay, this winter season we have many rains. So what do you think? The reason why we have so many rains in this winter? Okay, there might be a real world, problem question to students, so they can get to have the interest on climate changes. So you can use any kind of medias, multimedias, the animations, that is good, short videos, that is good, and then any kind of interactive activities. Example that I can show is, science teacher, they begins a lesson on gravity by dropping different objects and asking students why they fall at different speeds. It is kind of a stupid question. They all have same speed on Earth, I mean the gravity. But anyway, they can tell, you can drop the feather and then you can drop the ball, but it drops differently, right? So you can, as far as they understand in science book, all matters have the same speed when we drop on Earth, a condition of Earth gravity, right? I think it's 9.8 meter per second square. That is the equation of gravity on Earth. Anyway, but when you show them, the feather drops later, right? It takes time because the resistance of the air, right? So that makes kind of have students' interest about gravity. That is an example of to get students' attention. Second one, we call inform learners of objectives. It is like clearly state learning goals. Like there are many standards, objectives, state learning objective in simple language, like explain why we have to learn this topic, why we have to study this subject. You have to explain why we need math, why we need chemistry, why we need biology, why we need to study literature. You have to tell them. Without the understanding of reason why we have to study, they don't study. So you have to explain, and also each topics in the classroom, you have to give explanation to students. So like, by example, like, okay, children, students, by end of this quarter, semester, you will be able to explain what the gravity is like in science class, something like that. Also, you can apply that theory to real world problems. That is lesson Second, instructional activity event is you have to make student understanding the learning object. Okay, students, what you gonna understand at end of this semester? That is learners understanding an object. Third one is we call simulate, recall of prior knowledge. Connect new contents, new ideas to previous experiences. Okay, you may ask students to remember a related topic they learned previously and use brainstorming or quick review quizzes. You can do that and relate new contents to real-world experiences. Like example, before introducing algebra, right, in math class, teacher review basic arithmetics operations student they have learned before. It is, good methods when you teach new contents to the students. Always have the knowledge is connected to learning from the past. Okay, now it is for present contents. You have to deliver instructional material effectively. When you are in classroom as teacher, sometimes you can use different methods. Also, you use many different materials, study materials, right? It could be video watching. It could be a lab experimental. It could be anything. So you always consider deliver different instructional methods effective. So use multiple formats like class, lecture, visuals. You play videos. You can conduct hands-on activities. You can use new high-tech knowledges. These are all different formats that you can use in classroom. And then also always try to connect the knowledge students learn to real-world examples. Okay? And then also break down complex topics in smaller, manageable sessions. Okay, like a breakdown example is like history teacher. He present timeline of World War II using interactive digital maps. These are all used in providing, ready to delivery, different instructional material in classroom. Okay, I think we have five more. Okay, let's see. Another example is 5. Provide learning guidance. Learning guidance means you can offer students explanations, scaffoldings, and support. You can use different methods, just basic, simple explanation of some topics, or you can give some kind of a starting point, understand for complex equations in math classes. That is scaffolding. Like you give fundamental, foundational information that can student start on their own way. That is scaffolding. And then for support, like give step-by-step demonstration. You could give. You can use guided practice before independent work, or you can give students a hint and mnemonics or conceptual frameworks. If you give conceptual framework, maybe student can find the detail of each event, each knowledge in big understanding of framework, right? There should be example, like math teacher, they work through problem solving example on whiteboard before asking students to solve similar problem themselves. Okay, when you transfer new knowledge, new math theories in classroom, before starting that lecture, you give opportunity for students to demonstrate similar ideas in the classroom. You let your students solve similar problem first, then you give new ideas to students in math, any other classes. Okay, 6, elicit performance. Okay, that is engaging students in activity to apply the concepts. You can assign problem-solving exercises or discussions. You can conduct hands-on experiment or role-playing. Okay, also you can use peer teaching or collaborative learning. So its elicit performance might be the example here. After learning about persuasive writing, students create a short speech that is convincing the classmates of chosen argument. It is like this. Okay, students get assigned to write essay of certain topics, like 10 pages, right? Before that assignment was presented to the students, you do some kind of performance. Okay, I have small topics related to assignment that I want to give you. Then let's discuss about these small topics, which means student can get ideas of a small topic that is related to main essay assignment. So they can have some kind of idea by discussing small topics. Then they can write more detail about the topics. For example, okay, let's discuss. In America, in LA, we have many rains in this season. Can you guys tell us what is the reason? Okay, you discuss this first, then you could give assignment to the students. Assignment topic is climate change. You have to research about like 10 pages. So small discussion about rainy season in Los Angeles, so they can get some idea